Yo guys, hope you're doing great. Rango here. Today we're gonna have a look at YuGiOh's newest core booster set, Doom of Dimensions, coming September 26th, so end of next week, featuring support for the TCG exclusive RB, Archmage, Regenesis, Rose, True Draco, Sulfur Cord, as well as the Justice Hunters decks that are dominating the meta, and a couple of new interesting archetypes. The set features 10 secret rares, 14 ultra rares, 26 super rares, 50 commons. All the secret and ultra rares will be available as Starlight rares, as well as the Garden Rose Maiden, also getting a Starlight rare print for all the Rose enthusiasts out there. So, aside from that, we're also going to look at all the other cards, how I expect them to impact the metagame and what rarity they are printed, so that we can have a guess whether they will be on the cheaper or more expensive side. So, let's get right into it with a couple of more generic cards, two to be concrete, and the first one is Dogmatika Fleur-de-Lis the Thunderbolt, and this is a very interesting card. Level 8, 2500 attack and defense, because this is another hand trap, kind of Holisu Izuna kind of. The effect is during the main phase, if a monster special summoned from the extra deck is on the field, quick effect. So this also works during your opponent's first turn. You can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned from the hand, you can set one Dogmatika trap from your deck. It can be activated this turn while your opponent controls a Fusion, Synchro, Xyz or Link monster with 2500 or more attack. And everything, of course, is hard once per turn. This is very interesting, particularly for decks that don't use the extra deck themselves, because there is the Dogmatika Punishment, a relatively strong card to get turn 0 basically, together with a body, with a kind of sizable body, right? For everyone that does not know this card, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls, send one monster with an equal or higher attack from your extra to the graveyard, and if you do, destroy that monster. Until the end of your next turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck, and you can only activate one per turn. So, if you don't need your extra deck, this is a really good card, particularly, again, if you get it turn 0 and can disrupt your opponent immediately, and maybe even the body stays around for follow-up plays, or maybe just as a beat stick to out whatever your opponent was still able to set up. That said, this card is a secret rare, but I don't expect it to see a whole lot of play right away. We really don't have a lot of decks right now that don't care about the extra deck at all. But obviously in the future, if this is a good fit for an archetype, there is a lot of potential in this card. The more interesting one, in my opinion though, is the other generic card, which is Dominus Spiral. Obviously another Dominus card. We all know that this is that these all are really good if you can afford to play them, and this will be a similar story. During the turn in which your opponent has activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard, you can activate this card from your hand. Target one monster your opponent controls, return it to the hand or extra deck, then if you have no traps in your graveyard, your opponent can special summon one monster from their graveyard. If you activated this card from hand, you cannot activate effects of light or dark monsters for the rest of the duel, and you can only activate one Dominus Spiral per turn. Obviously, getting to bounce a monster from your opponent on a hand trap is pretty strong. That's definitely really strong. It's only really good though if you already have traps in your graveyard, in my opinion. or obviously if your opponent does not have a monster in their graveyard already. But since this doesn't deny any like on summon effects and things like that, you could often end up like, I don't know, for the on summon effect still resolving and then bouncing a monster. Can be kind of iffy, but obviously you decide what to target, and you want to target something that's beneficial for you. But like I said, if your opponent already has something in your graveyard, this card gets worse, so you also kind of want to use it as early on as possible. That said, if you play a lot of the trap card hand traps, this obviously is less of a downside. The actual really big downside for this card is that you cannot activate the effects of either light or dark monsters if you used it as a hand trap. And that's obviously quite the hefty restriction, and also the reason why I don't think that this card will see a lot of play immediately, because Yummy is a light deck, K9 has darks, Draco Tail also has both with the upcoming set now, so not something that really fits into the top meta decks right now at all, but some time down the line a deck will come out that does not particularly need these attributes, and that this card will obviously be really, really good. So with the generic cards out of the way, let's have a look at the new archetypes. And the first one is Doom Z. I'm not going to go too much into detail here, simply because I think that this archetype will not be quite relevant yet. There are a couple of good cards here, but it's, in my opinion, just not enough to be a very coherent strategy at this point. That said, to give you the quick idea of the archetype, it's an Xyz-based archetype that's centered around, first of all, destroying your own cards and getting bonus effects for them, but also equip not only spells but also monsters equipping to each other and then gaining bonus effects. They already have decent starters. One thing I think the deck is really lacking is a really good equip spell. Like, this is not bad. It makes the equipped monster untargetable and has a bonus effect that can help with closing out the game, but it's not progressing your game plan. And if we get an equip spell that does exactly that, there is a lot of potential in this archetype, but we'll have to see in the future. Since this is a story archetype, the chances are a lot better than for other archetypes, especially in the immediate future, but we'll have to see. This one also comes in 4 Super, 1 Ultra, and 2 Secret Rare slots. 2 of the cards are Secret Rares, and as the new story archetype, it, just like Archmage, also has a new Power Patron main deck monster, which comes in Super Rare, as well as a Power Patron boss monster, kind of, which is an Ultra Rare. Next up, we have the Radiant Typhoons, which come as 3 Super, 3 Ultra, and 1 Secret Rares. This is the MST archetype. A little sad that the translation does not keep the MST pun up, but still a pretty interesting archetype. So the 2 gimmicks of this deck are that the spells all have one unique effect, and then another effect that you could also add an MST from your deck or graveyard to your hand, and that if they are destroyed by the effect of MST, you can set them again. And they are similarly to how Yummy Surprise and Mitsurugi Ritual work. You can use both of the activate effects once per turn, so each one of these, if you have an MST to search, can, or add to your hand from your graveyard, can be used twice. Whereas the monsters, the smaller ones, they all can just be special summoned, either if you have Mystical Space Typhoon in your graveyard, or if your opponent controls no spells and traps. Which is sometimes a little bit weird, because they get a little bit worse going second, which is really awkward. Usually cards should get better going second, right? But that's just a quirk of the deck. So a lot of swarming potential, especially because all of the small ones kind of, well, get you an additional card when they're summoned, whether that be a Radiant Typhoon monster added to the hand, special summoned from the deck, or searching a Radiant Typhoon spell card in general. A lot of interesting stuff there, whereas the bigger ones, they can summon themselves if a quick play spell card is activated. They can summon themselves from hand. As well as if MST is activated while they're in the graveyard, you can also summon them from the grave. And then they provide some, like this is a searcher as well, but the one big one allows you to shuffle back 2 cards from your opponent, whereas the other negates a monster effect. Pretty good stuff. Also, the trap is interesting because not only is it like kind of an emerald, like Guster Emerald for Radiant Typhoon, so a little bit of recycling and drawing. It also has the effect that once per chain, when MST is activated, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls, negate its effects. If this card is destroyed by the effect of Mystical Space Typhoon, you can set this card. So it can also reset itself with the MST. But it actually makes kind of the meme come true that MST negates indirectly, which I think is pretty cool. As a standalone archetype, there's definitely potential in this, but here I also think that it will need some additional support. That said, it's really, really good as an engine, and particularly that last card down in the bottom shines there, Radiant Typhoon Vision. Luckily, this is a common, so this will be accessible for everyone. And it has the usual effects for the Radiant Typhoons, that it can reset itself when destroyed by MST, can also add a MST from deck or graveyard to hand, but it also is basically a trade-in for quick play spells. Draw 2 cards, then if you have a Radiant Typhoon card or a quick play spell in your hand, discard one of them or your entire hand if you don't. This has a lot of potential in quite a lot of decks, like not only in like bot breaker decks that are playing Forbidden Droplet and things like that. Sky Striker also has a lot of quick play spells by now, and Runic is another deck that comes to mind. So every deck that like has a lot of quick play spells they can use can gain extra consistency from this. And what's particularly interesting is that in the current format, while you wouldn't hard run MST, if you can actually search it, maybe even recycle it a couple of times, it's a decent card. Like against Yummy, you can out the field spells, get the surprise beforehand. Against Vanquish Soul, even though we'll have to see how relevant it is with a new spell list, getting rid of the trap early on is really good. Against Dracotel, you can just get rid of whatever they set, even going first. It's really good there, because if they fuse, set one of these spell cards, you can hit it before they can use it. So actually a pretty decent card, and something to keep in mind with this. Especially because if you open two of these, if you draw two of these, you can actually use both effects to like get more card draw at the MST, or at the MST first, then discard it for the second one, and will probably oftentimes be the better order, but that already gets you 3 spells in the graveyard, which Sky Striker really appreciates. There's even some ideas floating around playing this like in like a Sky Striker runic version, something like that. So definitely a very interesting card, and since it's a common, you definitely want to be sure to pick this up. Then for the existing support, one archetype with quite a lot of potential I think is DDD. I don't think it will break into like the tier 1 top meta contention, but this will definitely be a very powerful and relevant deck. It gets quite a lot of support cards, and as you can see they are quite lengthy in text, which is common for DDD cards. So with that fact, combined that this is quite an elaborate combo deck, we really can't cover this in this short overview, but if you're interested in like these very spreadsheet kind of combo decks, this is definitely something to look into. But to the even more meta relevant cards are the new support cards for the Justice Hunters archetypes: Canine, Yummy, and Dracotail. All of them get 2 new cards, so let's jump right into it. K904 Noroi will be an ultra rare, and this is a house of a card. If your opponent has 2 or more cards in their hand, you can normal summon without tributing. The standard Canine normal summon condition, but for this one it's actually a lot more relevant than for the others, because hard once per turn, if this card is normal summoned, you can special summon 1 non-machine Canine, so basically everyone except another copy of Noroi, monster from your deck, but you cannot special summon from the extra deck except Canine monsters, while you control that face-up monster. So it's basically an Ice Ryzeal that allows you to directly go into Ripper completely for free, which is really strong. And don't forget, this can bring out a Jokul, which then in turn can even get you a Lantern or Nizuna, depending on what you need. Go into Ripper, get another search for Canines, and all that allows you to make Ripper plus Sayuja, which is really powerful and a way that the Canines could bridge into a myriad of archetypes. Obviously, we'll have to see if it's worth it to actually put 4 bodies into Sayuja just to draw another archetype. Also for like Vanquish Soul, like that deck is still relatively normal summon reliant, so starting with this, well, being a good option, is not like some perfect synergy, and you're pretty likely to draw into playable Vanquish Souls at that point, but it's also not guaranteed. So we'll have to see how worth it this is. But for Crystron Canine, this is very good, because combined with River Storm and then linking into Platinum Gadget, this also becomes a full combo starter for that deck. And on top of all that, it has a small bonus effect, which is you can send 1 face-up Canine card you control to the graveyard, look at your opponent's hand. Obviously, the prime send for this is the case of Canine. It does not trigger to search the quick play in this situation, but still, getting some information on the hand can be very much appreciated. Obviously, it's not an ultra powerful effect because it does not cost your opponent a card, but being able to exactly know what to play around will definitely make quite the difference. The other card for K9 is the super rare K966X Jax. 2 level 5 monsters, and if it's Xyz summoned or if your opponent activates a monster effect in hand or graveyard, you can detach a material and then destroy one monster on the field, targeting. The sad part about this is that it's a hard once per turn. So, if you Xyz summon it, you get to pop a monster, but you'll have to wait a turn to get the second pop. I think it's reasonable, because if this card would pop 2 cards on your opponent's turn, basically, one on summon and then when they try to play into it, another one, this would obviously be a crazy summon off of Izuna. This way, it's oftentimes a little bit worse than like Nash Knight or Valon even, depending on the matchup. But for decks that don't really care about their monsters being booked, like particularly Fusion and Ritual decks like Draco Tail and Mitsurugi, this is obviously a very welcome addition. And it's not like, compared to Valon, this also being another K9, which you can then rank up into Werewolf, is obviously an advantage. And speaking of ranking up into Werewolf, if you do it with this, the K9 Xyz monster that has this as material gets a bonus effect, which is that during any turn where your opponent has activated a monster effect in hand or grave, standard K9 clause, any battle damage this card inflicts to your opponent is doubled. And with Werewolf being like 3300, potentially even boosted by the case of K9, that can be a lot of damage and can really help closing out games. So with this, these are both definitely very strong support cards for all K9 variants. With this, even a pure K9 variant becomes like decent. I don't think it will be a top meta contender, but it's definitely quite playable. For this one, it's a little bit sad that Moon got banned, because I feel like K9 Fiendsmith, by making Moon, could have had a lot of potential, but we won't get that. So we'll have to see which decks make the best out of it. I feel like with this, Vanquish Soul K9 at least becomes decent again, and K9 Crystron might actually become very strong again. Next up we have Draco Tail, which gets the secret rare Draco Tail Frixel. Luckily, I don't think this will be all that expensive, because it will usually be a one-off, and why you will see when we read this effect. If it's normal or special summoned, you can target one Draco Tail monster in your graveyard except another Frixel, special summon it, then return one monster you control to the hand. So this alone has quite the nice resource loop, that you can just summon it, bring back like Lucius to get the surge, return itself to the hand and do that every time over and over again, or bounce one of the Draco Tail monsters to get the set effect, which this obviously has as well. So I don't think this is a card that will make like spawn new lines, or will even make the first turn for Draco Tail a lot better. It will come up sometimes that you can already put like more follow-up into your hand, or maybe get to an additional trap card, which will become relevant in a second, but for the most part the turn 1 lines won't really change. What does change is that the grind game and follow-up of Draco Tail get quite a lot better with this, which is not necessarily what Draco Tail needed, but is obviously still greatly appreciated. And just having an additional name is another decent effect, like another decent thing for the deck as well. And then talking about trap cards, we also get a new trap card, Draco Tail Sting. Target one monster and/or spell trap in your opponent's graveyard, banish them, then you can place one Draco Tail card from your graveyard or banishment on the bottom of the deck. Except Draco Tail Sting, then draw a card. Can only activate one per turn. So, This card is interesting, so it's basically kind of a DD Crow for a monster and or spell, so if there's something relevant you can even get 2 banishes for your opponent's cards. There are also a couple of interesting lines with this, especially because what makes this particularly interesting is that this will basically always be live. Like, it will be very, very rare that your opponent will have nothing in the graveyard. So as opposed to Flame and Horn, getting the draw and the recycle off of this will be really, really easy, which I think is the biggest advantage of this card. And it's even a little bit more difficult to play around than Horn. The issue is obviously that already with 2 of the traps in the deck, they feel quite bricky. Like, in my experience, you draw them quite often and it feels really, really bad. There's obviously the question if you want to play all 3. I feel like there's an argument to main decking 2 and siding the 3rd, because in very grindy matchups like the mirror match, having all 3 of them and being able to make the cycle a little bit more stable, a little bit more difficult to break, is definitely nice in these kind of matchups, but playing all 3 main deck is definitely iffy. The question is which ones you want to play, because I feel like Flame is clearly the best one, and for Horn and Sting it's kind of rough. Like I said, Sting is always live, which makes it good, but Horn is, in theory at least, the better interruption. In practice, obviously, your opponent will always like just summon everything in defense to play around Horn, but there's also value in that, right? If your opponent just summons most of his stuff in defense position, you're pretty likely to survive the turn, which is usually enough for Dracotail. Like, the deck has such a strong grind game and follow-up that will oftentimes be enough, and it plays very well into boards. So I'll be definitely interested to see which of these we will see played, and I'm definitely open to trying it with 3. Maybe at that point you really want to go a little bit above 40, which is a little bit easier considering that we have another Dracotail name. So definitely still a lot of stuff to figure out for the Dracotail players. And this is a common, so again, very accessible to everybody. But now we get to the overall best support cards, although for Yummy, one is really good, probably like the best card in terms of immediate impact, at least, of the set. Whereas the other one is kind of mediocre, but we're gonna go over it anyways. And the kind of mid one is Yum Yum Yummies, a permanent spell, continuous spell, that reads: each time 2 or more yummy monsters are special summoned to your field, at the same time you gain 500 life points, and if you do, your opponent loses 500 life points. Obviously, for Yummy, this can actually add up to quite a bit, but with the new time rules, this effect obviously is a lot more relevant. All the other effects are hard ones per turn. The first one being, you can pay 500 life points, then target 2 face-up monsters on the field, including a Snatchy. Send both to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon 1 Yummy Synchro monster from your deck. This is treated as a Synchro summon. So basically, you can once per turn just super Synchro, kind of. Synchro summon using one of your opponent's monsters, which is definitely a good effect, and actually also something I feel like Yummy quite likes. The question is if this will be good enough, but before talking about that, let's have a look at the second effect. If your opponent activates a card effect, except during the damage step, you can pay 100 life points immediately after this effect resolves. Link summon 1 Yummy Link monster, so you can, even during your opponent's turn, if you don't have a Snatchy live, get into the Snatchy to be able to start your interruptions from there with the Snatchy effect. So, obviously, both of these effects are actually quite good. I'm not gonna lie, these are two pretty strong effects. The issue with this card, I feel like, is for the most part that Yummy Surprise is better. And with the way the deck operates, you oftentimes can only search out one of the Yummy spells. Like, obviously, Snatchy places you the field spells, but Copsy gets you one of the Yummy spells, and Surprise is just the stronger and more versatile one there, meaning that oftentimes you won't be able to search this. I feel like there's an argument that maybe Yummy could side this to out certain problem cards, or maybe just to get a little bit more board breaking capability going second. But overall, I feel like this won't see a lot of play, and only because Yummy Surprise kind of outclasses it. Some people might now argue, well, Surprise, why not just play 3 copies, then you, like, it's a pretty good draw, then you don't have to search it that often, and then this card can shine. The issue with that is that with the other new card, you really don't need more than 1 Surprise. And if you really don't need that, I feel like you really shouldn't play it. Like, obviously, up to now, it was kind of a 2, sometimes even 3 off, because you wanted 1 for your turn, 1 for your opponent's turn. And like I said, hard drawing it wasn't that bad. But with the other one being a monster, we do have enough starters and extenders without playing more of them. And this is a house of a card aside from that. Because if you control no monsters, or all the monsters you control are light beast monsters, you can special summon it. Something to note is this starts a chain from the hand, so this does activate the canines, which is good because there's quite a lot to come. If this card is special, normal or special summon, you can add 1 Yummy spell trap from your graveyard to your hand. So this is the reason we only need 1 Surprise. We can just use it during our turn, then add it back with Marshmallow, and still have 1 for our opponent's turn, which is really, really strong. Or if this card was special summoned by the effect of a synchro monster, you can place 1 Yummy field spell or 1 Yummy continuous spell trap from your deck or banishment face up on the field instead. Obviously, here the Yummy continuous spell, you could argue, well, you could just put this up, right? True, you can, but this is obviously the synchro effect, so you won't get this as often. And also, this is kind of a brick, right? And for the most part, I feel like Yummy would just rather play more non-engine instead, especially since, again, this does not come up quite as often. Usually, you would summon this, like, you would use this effect on the first turn to add back Surprise. And then use, if you get it, you could then use this on your opponent's turn, and at that point, if you already set up, like, this effect is nice, but it doesn't really do a whole lot, and this is an effect you want during your own turn, right? So, kind of iffy. Like I said, maybe going second, placing this then could become good, but yeah. So to get back to Marshmallow, because like I said, this is probably the best card of the set, definitely in terms of immediate impact. It's another Yummy name, which allows Yummy to either play more starters or even cut down on, like, the worse Yummy effects. Like, I've seen people go down to 2 Cookie and 1 Lollipop even in a lot of OCG lists, and at least cutting a couple of Lollipops definitely makes sense with this. Then, like I said, you can now run only 1 Surprise, get more room for non-engine, and still be able to use it on your own and your opponent's turn. which also means that with the additional name, a lot of Yummy combos can end up with 2 additional bodies. Like, it also doesn't open up any like fundamentally new lines, but being able to get 2 more bodies allows you to play through a lot more things, be able to maybe set up more interruptions, and is definitely very, very strong. And it also solves the issue that if your minion gets banished, if your field spells get banished, that your deck becomes really, it becomes really difficult for the deck to just put up any damage and even run over anything. It's now solved because now you can just put them back. So this is a crazy, crazy card. This might put Yummy up to the best deck in the game. It did in the OCG. Like, with this, Yummy surpassed full power VSK9 in the OCG. In our format, we'll have to see, like, the way the Yummy is positioned in the current format. It's definitely a little bit awkward because the Draco Tail matches up quite well into Yummy, and Mitsurugi as well. Mitsurugi really, really strong into Yummy. So maybe Yummy won't be quite as dominant for us as in the OCG, but this 100% puts it back into the tier 1 status, guaranteed. Sadly, this is a secret rare. This is a 3-off. This will be expensive. This will be the money secret rare of the set. This will be like at least 40 bucks, especially on the American side, maybe even a little bit more. And that's a little bit sad because aside from Purge, Yummy up to now was a quite affordable deck. And with this, it suddenly isn't anymore, which I think is a little bit sad. But we still have Draco Tail and Mitsurugi, which will be relatively affordable options going forward. Alright, and with that, we conclude the first look at the Doom of Dimensions. I hope you're as excited for this upcoming format as I am, and hope you continue to have a great day. Signing out. Peace.